Good evening. Leading the news this Monday, President Reagan proposed eliminating 80 federal programs to reduce the budget deficit for 1989. The Supreme Court agreed to hear another important abortion case. The rare failure of both engines is being considered as the possible cause of the air crash that killed 44 in Britain. We'll have details in our news summary in a moment. Jim?
After the news summary, we look at whether Oliver North should be pardoned, with Senator ORRIN and Representatives Henry Hyde, Louis Stokes, and Patricia Schroeder. Then comes a Tom Bearden profile of Frank Lorenzo, the head of the world's largest airline company, and an analysis of what the death of Emperor Hirohito may mean to the future of Japan.
The judge in the Iran-Contra case today asked the Justice Department to assure him that security concerns would prevent a public trial of key conspiracy and theft charges against Oliver North. Judge Gerhard Gesell said he wanted assurance from Attorney General Richard Thornburg that the decision was made at the highest levels of the government. The judge made the request at a hearing this afternoon in U.S. District Court attended by Defendant North. Judge Gesell indicated that when he got such an assurance, he would dismiss the charges, as requested by independent counsel Lawrence Walsh last week. Walsh asked that 2 charges be dropped when intelligence agencies balked at releasing classified documents North said he needed in his defense. Soviet Foreign Minister Eduard Shevardnadze said today that American evidence he'd been given did not prove allegations that Libya has a chemical weapons plant. He told reporters at the International Chemical Weapons Conference in Paris that Secretary of State Shultz showed me the building plan, but that proves nothing. Shultz met Shevardnadze yesterday and said the Soviets had promised to conduct their own inquiry into the Libyan plant. Libya told the conference today that the U.S. allegations were clearly false.
The fighting among Muslim factions intensified today in Lebanon. At least 80 people were killed in the clashes that some reports said turned to massacres. We have a report from Roderick Pratt of Worldwide Television News.
Amal militia launched a major counterattack against villages lost to Hezbollah only hours before. Advancing under heavy barrages of artillery, they began recapturing the villages stretching between the port of Sidon and the Israeli buffer zone in the south of Lebanon. About 1,000 Amal men took part in the operation, which began early in the morning. Both rival Shiite Muslim groups launched house-to-house raids. Many victims were hacked to death. Others had their throats cut. The hospital wards in Sidon are once again full of wounded. The violence continues to rage despite appeals for peace by both Syria and Iran. Fighting between the two sides also broke out again in the southern suburbs of West Beirut. The Syrian troops are trying to maintain order. Civilians ran for cover as Amal militia tried to regain areas from which Hezbollah drove them out in more clashes last year.
There were also more clashes today between Israeli troops and Palestinian demonstrators in the occupied territories. The Associated Press said 26 protesters were shot and wounded by the soldiers. And that's it for the news summary tonight. Now it's on to the future of Oliver North, a profile of Frank Lorenzo, and the future of Japan. We go first tonight to the question of a pardon for Oliver North. Independent counsel Lawrence Walsh has asked that 2 important charges against the fired White House aide be dropped. Those charges go to the heart of the Iran-Contra affair, alleging North was part of a conspiracy that illegally diverted funds from the Iran arms sale to the Nicaraguan Contras. Walsh said it was impossible to proceed because of the unavailability of many classified documents. The judge today indicated he would grant the dismissal once he received certification from Attorney General Richard Thornburg that release of the documents would in fact jeopardize national security. 12 other charges remain against North. But North supporters in Congress and elsewhere have used the dismissal action to step up calls for a presidential pardon of North. 2 leading sounders of that pardon call are with us, Senator ORRIN, Republican of Utah, who is with us from the studio on Capitol Hill, and Congressman Henry Hyde of Illinois. Both were members of Iran-Contra Select Investigating Committees. On the other side of the argument, another Iran-Contra Committee member, Congressman Louis Stokes, Democrat of Ohio, who joins us from public station WVIZ in Cleveland, and Congresswoman Pat Schroeder, Democrat of Colorado, a member of the House Judiciary Committee. Senator Hatch, let's go to you first. Why should the trial of Oliver North on the other 12 charges not go forward?
Well, remember, the mandate of the Special Independent Counsel was, of course, to investigate the diversion of funds primarily, and now those charges are going to be dismissed. In other words, approximately a month ago, the special prosecutor moved for dismissal of a number of other charges, and then here today moved for a dismissal of really the gut charges for which this man was charged. There are 12 remaining counts. 4 of them are because Oliver North prepared letters for McFarland to send to Congress. One of them is alleging that Oliver North made a false statement in the White House to members of Congress. Another one was that he participated in preparing a false chronology, and 2 more are that he made 2 false statements to Ed Meese at the instant investigation. Now keep in mind something nobody's really centered on. None of those statements, none of those letters, in none of those counts was Oliver North under oath. He did not do anything under oath. And here he's going to be hung by 30 prosecutors, 50 investigators, another 50 support staff, and the expenditure of $13 million thus far without even getting to trial on these charges that no reasonable or experienced prosecutor would have brought. Now, there are some remaining charges. He is accused of destroying documents, but he explained that away very effectively in the Iran-Contra hearings. He's also accused of taking approximately $13,000 security system. But I might add that under the laws that existed then, to win on that account, the public official, meaning North, would have to have accepted something of value in return for his being influenced in the performance of any official act. And I think that's going to be a very tough case to prove, especially since Abu Nidal, probably the terrorist behind the Pan Am shoot-down or bomb, had threatened him and his family. The other 2 are for converting traveler's checks. Now, there wasn't one member of the Iran-Contra hearing that wasn't satisfied, it seemed to me at the time, with Oliver North's explanation of what he did with the traveler's chest. And the last one is an all-catch-all account called conspiracy to defraud, because there were those who raised funds who did so through nonprofit corporations, and now the IRS is saying they should have done it through and paid taxes on it through profit corporations. Now, what I'm saying is that no experienced prosecutor, and I talked with a number of prosecutors today, none of them would have brought this case against a member of the National Security Council who never did anything under oath on these kind of Mickey Mouse charges that literally can be answered, every one of them. Last but not least, very important aspect of the judge's ruling today. When the judge ruled today that they have to comply with the process of SIPA, the Classified Information Procedures Act, all he's saying is you've just got to follow every step. But secondly, the judge said we're still going to have to get into the issues involving what kind of classified information North is going to have to use in order to prove his defenses, and he has them to every one of these 12 Mickey Mouse charges, meaning that the issue on classified documents is not over yet, it won't be over yet, and I think North is going to be able to make a very good case in his defense. But it's ridiculous to have to go through all this, since nobody would have brought the case to begin with on these charges, and I think the President ought to end the charade. He ought to bite the bullet, and he ought to grant a pardon in this case, which is his right to do. And I think the rest of the country, everybody would say, oh my gosh, it's about time. We're tired of this. It should be over. It's gone on too long, and it's just being used for political purposes by certain members of Congress anyway.
Congressman Stokes, would you be one of those who would say it's about time that these are Mickey Mouse charges and the trial should not go forward?
Well, firstly, I have a very real problem with any member of Congress who refers to these very serious charges as being Mickey Mouse charges. I think as a member of the United States Congress, with the realization that this man is charged with lying to Congress, which is a violation of law, where he's charged with shredding and destruction of government documents, where he is charged with having manufactured false testimony going to the United States Congress, to describe these charges as being Mickey Mouse charges is, to me, a real disservice in our own representative capacity. I think that, notwithstanding the fact that the 2 main charges may be dismissed, that the other 12 remaining charges are very serious charges, that there is no reason why he should not be made to stand trial on the other 12 charges. And I think that a service would be rendered to the country in terms of permitting the prosecution of these charges.
What would be the service to the country, Congressman?
Well, in the sense that we would be setting a totally immoral standard in terms of justice in this country, were we to let him off the hook. We have to remember now, at our Iran-Contra hearings, it was North himself who described his testimony before us as being the good, the bad, and the ugly. Then he went on to tell us how he shredded and destroyed government documents with the FBI agents in another room, how he just callously and in total mockery of everything that is right about integrity in government, destroyed documents, how he participated in the manufacture of false testimony to the government. And in terms of the gratuity, the illegal gratuities he took, the money that he diverted from the Contra money that was supposed to go to the Nicaraguans. Certainly, anyone who has done all the things that he admitted to having done before our Iran-Contra panel certainly should be tried on those matters and then let the chips fall where they may in a court of law.
Congresswoman Schroeder, you agree with Congressman Stokes?
Absolutely. I did not sit on that committee, so I'm looking at it as an outsider. But let me lay a couple things on the table. The very first article of the Constitution says you cannot spend money, government money, unless it's been authorized by law. There's absolutely no question they sold them missiles for $10,000, and the government got about $3,400 back. Now, if I sold my office furniture, which I can't do because it belongs to the government, and then I decided to be really nice, no matter whether I gave it to Mother Teresa or anything else, I would be in big trouble. You do not take government in your own hands. And that's what this is really about. It's kind of an embezzlement and a diversion case. Secondly, if my defense is for saying the wrong thing to the IRS or saying shredding documents as the Justice Department moves into it, if I say, wait a minute, I'm a patriot, that is not a defense under the law. We say this is a government of laws and not of men. And therefore, you're not allowed to tamper with the facts and shred the documents and divert things and cover it up for the Internal Revenue Service. We also know that both President Reagan and President Bush have said that they were aware of the Iran sales of the missiles. And they were trying to get the hostages back, which was a humanitarian thing, and we can, argue whether or not that was wise, but it was humanitarian. I'm the one who cries. I'm for humanitarian things. But they said they did not know about the diversion of these funds. And I think they ought to be getting a little angry as you see this defense attorney running out, threatening to subpoena everybody, saying they got to have 300 documents, wanting to bring in all of these guys. They're saying the president made Ollie North do it. Now, they can't say the president made Ollie North divert his traveler's checks, and they can't say the president made Ollie North lie to the IRS. For crying out loud, that's ridiculous. So I don't blame the president for not pardoning him, and I don't think he should. Because I think what we're going to be saying, if we do that, is that some people don't have to comply with the law, and that's never been the United States position. And it also says the government is a fungus. It can't operate in the sunshine. Of course it can operate in the sunshine. People don't want someone down in the basement carrying on all their little private whatever it is. And I just think that's very important. And I must say I'm really incensed at how this defense attorney's been carrying this out by just trying to say he has to have every document in the world, and of course it may leak out, and of course intelligence sources may be harmed, and all of that. That's shocking to me. I would think they'd be moving to justice. He must be getting paid very well by the receipts of Ollie North speeches around the country. And as long as Ollie North keeps getting speeches and keeps getting money, that defense attorney's going to keep dragging this thing on. But we in America ought to get to the truth of it, get to the bottom of it, and move on.
Congressman Hyde, what would be the message of a presidential pardon?
Well, let me respond to Pat's remarks a few minutes ago. She's critical of Brendan Sullivan for representing his client. I think that's in the finest traditions of the law. He's representing somebody who doesn't have a job. Yes, he can go around and raise some money speaking, but he can't possibly raise the $13 million that the government has spent thus far over 2 years to bring 12 counts of lying to Congress and accepting a gratuity. The imbalance is incredible. Now, Pat forgets, I suppose, that the diversion count is dismissed. That's no longer in the case. The things that incense her so much are no longer in the case.
The issue is why.
The issue is because to defend himself, he is entitled to produce documents which contain sensitive material that cannot be disclosed.
And that his attorney says might get disclosed. Now, you know and I know, because we're both attorneys, there is a way that you could present that or prevent that from being disclosed.
Well, why don't you tell Judge Walsh that then? Because Judge Walsh, who is not quite as experienced as you, Pat, but still pretty experienced, a former federal judge, has gone in and asked to dismiss the counts. Attorney General Thornburg agrees with him. And so it just seems to me that you're beating a dead horse.
Let me beat the dead horse of my question, Congressman Hyde. What do you think the message would the legal things aside, if the president were to pardon Oliver North, whether it's President Reagan or President Bush?
It would be a message of compassion. It would say enough is enough. For 2 years now, you and Poindexter have gone through a ringer for doing what? For trying to serve the president. The president, after all, wanted to sell the weapons to Iran. The president wanted to open channels. The president wanted to release the hostages. And don't tell me the president didn't want to keep the Contras alive while Congress pirouetted from support to lack of support. Now, poor Oliver North, a hero who won the Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars, 2 Purple Hearts, serving his country bravely, was trying to do an impossible task, what the Secretary of State wouldn't do, what the Secretary of Defense wouldn't do, but Oliver North and Poindexter and McFarland, it was left to them to do. They were serving the president. It wasn't corrupt. They weren't aggrandizing to themselves. They were trying to protect hostages and keep the Contras alive, something we failed to do in the Bay of Pigs. A pardon would say, gentlemen, in the totality of your services to our country, however wrong, however misguided, your intentions, your purposes were good, we forgive you. We don't find you not guilty, we forgive you.
But I'm just going to say Iran still has the hostages. They didn't get out. They got the missiles. The taxpayers didn't get the money. And the president said that he wasn't part of this diversionary scheme. Now, I hear you saying you're sure he was. But they seem to want to keep that from happening. That's a dispute then between Oliver North and the
president. You haven't been paying attention.
Well, if I could say something here. First of all we heard about was the diversion of funds. What a terrible thing it is. And both of these people have said it again, even though now they've lost on this. I predicted this, and so did Henry Hyde, a year and a half ago, that they could never come to court on this particular issue, that it would be thrown out because of classified documents. Now it is. Now they have these minor charges that literally, not one of which was he under oath on. And keep that in mind. And I might add, Pat, no matter what you say, you haven't apparently sat through all this, but the 300 documents that were involved here were literally the government's documents. They didn't even begin to get into the documents that Oliver North needed to make his case.
Oh, but
let me just finish. The fact of the matter is that Brandon Sullivan is doing exactly what he should do. He's defending his client, and he's doing it in the highest form of legal defense that could be done. He's basically got all of the big shot charges out of the way, and now you have a number of other little charges that literally can be explained and were by Oliver North. Take the one on obstruction of funds.
Senator, wait a minute. Let's don't go through each one of these again.
Well, I won't.
I want to get to Congressman Stokes on the general question of what message this would send to the nation if the president, either one of these presidents, pardon Oliver North.
May I just say something, Lou, before you answer? Include in your answer the message the nation got when Carter gave amnesty to the draft dodgers in 1977 who went to Canada and went to Sweden. Put that in the equation, if you would.
Well, let's just answer my question first, Congressman. Please.
I would have to say to you that a pardon for Oliver North would make a total mockery of the judicial system in this country. I think it would lead to anarchy, because every person sitting in a prison somewhere in America would wonder what they are doing there when a man like Oliver North, who was fired by the President of the United States, he went out of office in disgrace. So let's not make a hero out of him. He and Poindexter both were fired. But more than that, you cannot have two standards of justice in this country. The President has denied any knowledge of what Oliver North was doing. The president fired him for the reason that he was not serving the purposes of this country. So now the charges that he's facing, he should be permitted to face those charges as any other person who has committed the type of crimes that he has committed, and justice should take its due course in a court of law. But certainly for him to be pardoned would be very similar to what we saw happen with President Nixon some years ago when he was pardoned for crimes that he committed or may have committed while in office, which was another mockery of the justice law. But certainly for him to face those charges as any other person who has committed the type of crimes that he has committed, and justice should take its due course in a court of law. But certainly for him to be pardoned would be very similar to what we saw happen with President Nixon some years ago when he was pardoned for crimes that he committed or may have committed while in office, which was another mockery of the justice system in our country.
Mockery, Congressman Hyde?
No, I don't think so. I think it would be compassion. It would be recognizing that these people were trying to serve causes that were the president's own. Remember, a pardon is not absolution. It isn't saying you're not guilty. It's saying we forgive you. I think these men who served their country bravely have paid enough.
All right.
Okay. I have to say, I'm shocked. I think it means that you can lie anytime in the government except when you're under oath. I think that's shocking.
Well, could I make one point? I don't know of any case in the history of this country where literally a person wasn't under oath when the statements were made, where indictments have occurred.
And paid for by the taxpayer?
If President Reagan had pardoned before the diversion of funds and conspiracy counts were removed, then he would have been criticized by these very same people as trying to hide something. Now that they're gone, he should not allow this travesty to continue one more day, because no self-respecting prosecutor, it seems to me, would have brought these kind of 12 counts.
We have to leave it there. Thank you all four very much.